I want to welcome everybody.
Chcem všetkých privítať.
We've had some technical problems at this camp meeting so far.
Mali sme nejaké technické problémy na camp meetingu.
So I hope the digital whiteboard will work, but I'm having to use the hotspot to do that, so it may not work. There may be some lag.
Dúfam, že digitálna tabula bude fungovať, ale používam ju cez hotspot, tak môže tam byť nejaké oneskorenie.
I've got some notes for this study.
Mám poznámky na túto štúdiu.
It's taken from Christ Object Lessons.
Je to z Kristových podobenstiev.
Chapter 5.
5. kapitola.
And it begins page 76.
A začína to na strane 76.
The translators should have that information.
Prekladatelia by už mali mať tie informácie.
I've also got a second reference.
Tiež mám aj druhú...
Which is August 2nd, 1892.
Druhú referenciu, a to je 2. august 1882. To je kázeň od A.T. Jonesa.
And it was published in the Advent Review and Sabbath Herald.
A bolo to publikované v Advent Review a Sabbath Herald.
And I've given the page numbers for everybody.
Dal som sem stránkovanie pre všetkých.
I've given the page numbers for you. So there aren't any notes. There aren't notes for the Jones article because I've already shared that in the past. It's one that I've used or referenced previously.
Nemáme poznámky na tento článok od Jonesa, lebo to som vzdielal ešte v minulosti.
So I just want to make reference back to the A.T. Jones article.
Ale chcel som vám povedať tú odvolávku na tento jeho článok.
This would be the fourth paragraph, but you don't need to know that.
Bude to 4. odstavec, ale to vám netreba vedieť.
In the first 3 paragraphs, Jones is going to quote several Bible verses.
V prvých 3 odstavcoch on tam cituje nejaké biblické verše.
I'm going to quote from Matthew and Acts.
Cituje z Matúša, Skutkov.
And then in the 4th paragraph, he begins to comment on these verses that he's referenced.
A v 4. odstavci komentuje na tie verše, ktoré vlastne použil.
So that we understand what the subject is.
Aby sme rozumeli, aká je tá téma.
The title.
Ten názov.
Is the gospel.
Je evanjelium.
And there are some sub-questions.
Sú tam aj nejaké podotázky.
What is it?
Čo to je?
And how it works.
A ako to funguje?
I've paraphrased the title.
Parafrázoval som ten nadpis alebo názov.
And he's going to discuss what it is.
A bude hovoriť o tom, čo to je.
And how it works.
A ako to funguje.
And when he does that,
a keď to urobí,
the second bit of how it works,
tá druhá časť toho, ako to funguje,
he's going to compare it.
To porovná s tým.
Does anybody know what he's going to compare it to?
S čím to porovná?
Good. The mystery of iniquity.
Tajomstvom neprávosti.
So, obviously all of us should understand this methodology that he's using here, just in the title.
Všetci z nás by mali rozumieť tejto metodológii, ktorú tu používa.
He's going to define what the gospel is for us.
On pre nás definuje, že čo je to
And once he's
evanjelium.
done that,
A keď to spravil,
he's going to compare and contrast the gospel to the mystery of iniquity.
porovná a dá do protikladu evanjelium s tajomstvom neprávosti.
How many people here in the group have actually read this article? I think I brought it to the movement's consciousness several months ago now.
Koľko ľudí v tejto skupine čítalo ten článok? Ja som to pred pár mesiacmi priviedol k vašej pozornosti.
Okay, so for people online, I don't know how many people have studied it, but nobody here in our group has read through this article.
Tu v našej skupinke si to nikto nečítal. Neviem, ako vy online.
So I'm just going to read, having given that introduction, just a few words from the 4th paragraph.
Takže ja vám prečítam pár slov z toho odstavcu.
All these verses are essential for us to know the full force.
Všetky tieto verše sú nevyhnutné na to, aby sme poznali celú silu.
The full force of the commission or the work which God has given to his disciples.
Celú silu poverenia, ktoré Pán v tom čase dal svojim učeníkom.
When he says Lord, he's referring to Jesus at this time, in this context.
Keď tu hovorí Pán, tak má na mysli v tomto kontexte Ježiša.
They were to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature.
Mali ísť do celého sveta a hlásať evanjelium všetkému stvoreniu.
They were to go into all the world.
Takže mali ísť do celého sveta.
And they were to preach the gospel to every creature.
A mali hlásať evanjelium každému stvoreniu.
Teaching all nations.
Učiť o ňom všetky národy.
And yet, they were not to go until they were given power from heaven.
Ale nemali ísť, kým nebudú obdarení mocou zhora.
If you go through the sermon, it's really informative.
Keď si prejdete cez tú kázeň, je to veľmi informatívne.
If you took the time to study it and break down some of his ideas, it'd be very informative for people, I think.
Ak by ste si našli na to čas si to študovať a rozobrať si tie jeho myšlienky, bude to pre vás veľmi prínosné, informatívne.
On the surface, it's a very conventional sermon. It's really about Jesus and the New Testament gospel.
Na povrchu je to taká konvenčná kázeň o Ježišovi, o Novom zákone.
And I want to now switch to Christ object lessons.
Chcel by som teraz prejsť k Kristovým podobenstvám.
So as we go through chapter 5, you should all be familiar with this to some degree, I hope.
Ako pôjdeme cez 5. kapitolu, to by ste všetci mali poznať, aspoň trochu si myslím.
I know it's difficult if you haven't read Jones's sermon.
Ja viem, že je to zložité, ak ste nečítali tu jeho kázeň.
But if you had read it, you'd be able to compare chapter 5 from Christ Object Lessons.
Ale ak ste to čítali, mohli by ste porovnať tú 5. kapitolu z Kristových podobenstiev
with the sermon by Jones
s tou kázňou, ktorú dal Jones
and the classes that we recently did in Slovakia.
A s hodinami, ktoré sme nedávno urobili na Slovensku.
All these ideas or concepts all come together.
Tam sa všetky tieto myšlienky a koncepty spájajú dohromady.
So my attention got brought to chapter 5.
Moja pozornosť bola privedená k 5. kapitole.
because I was invited to a family worship with some friends, and that happened to be the study that they were doing that day.
Pozvali ma na rodinné stretnutie u nejakých kamarátov a oni vtedy študovali na pobožnosti túto
And when we
kapitolu.
read the chapter, it's a pretty short chapter.
Je to taká krátka kapitola a keď sme ju čítali,
there were certain thoughts that caught my attention
boli tam určité myšlienky, ktoré sa dotkli mojej pozornosti, ktoré chytili.
that seemed to be in alignment with Jones's sermon and the studies that I've been doing in the last several months.
Boli vlastne v takej línii s tou Jonesovou kázňou a so štúdiami, ktoré som robil za posledné
I
mesiace.
think you're all familiar
Myslím, že všetci poznáte,
that I have been speaking for some time now
alebo viete, že už nejaký čas som hovoril o tom
and asking the question.
a pýtal som sa otázku
I've asked it various ways.
rôznymi spôsobmi.
What is a radical feminist?
Čo je to radikálny feminizmus alebo feminista?
Or what is radical feminism?
Čo je radikálny feminizmus?
To be honest, I haven't had much feedback from people.
Aby som bol úprimný, nedostal som príliš veľkú spätnú väzbu od ľudí.
Or much pushback.
Alebo nejakej takej, že by ma nejak zatlačili naspäť.
So I began discussing this subject in Fiji around April time.
Začal som hovoriť o tejto téme na Fidži niekedy v apríli.
But those meetings were not recorded.
Ale tieto stretnutia sa nenahrávali.
So I repeated the study in a shorter form at a later camp meeting. I can't remember where that was.
Zopakoval som tú štúdiu na neskoršom camp meetingu, to si teraz nepamätám, kedy to bolo. Trošku v takej skrátenej verzii.
Does anybody remember what I spoke about with respect to radical feminism or what a radical feminist is?
Pamätá si niekto z vás, o čom som hovoril ohľadne radikálneho feminizmu, alebo čo to je radikálny feminizmus?
I spoke about reading more on the subject, that we should read more books. I certainly did that.
Áno, povedal som, že by sme o tejto téme mali čítať viacej kníh, to určite áno.
Okay. That's all Francisco can remember. Anyone else?
Ešte niekto niečo viete, pamätáte?
Can you hear me at the back? I'll try and raise my voice. Manuel.
Remember, you compare and contrast radical feminism with liberal feminism in Brazil.
So I compared and contrast radical feminism with, you said, liberal feminism?
Ja som porovnal a dal do protikladu radikálny a liberálny feminizmus.
Anyone else?
Ešte niekto?
Christy?
I just remember you asking the class what they thought about it was, and so I just remember their answers.
Okay, so I asked a class, I've asked various classes what these terms mean to them.
Pýtal som sa na rôznych hodinách, že čo tieto pojmy pre nich znamenajú.
So I know some people in the movement don't agree with what I've stated or I'm about to state.
Viem, že niektorí ľudia v hnutí nesúhlasia s tým, čo teraz poviem, aj čo som povedal.
So when I describe how I see things and you disagree,
keď som popísal, že ako veci vidím a vy s tým ste nesúhlasili, alebo či súhlasíte alebo nesúhlasíte, to je jedno.
I'm going to go back to Christ Object Lessons, chapter 5.
Vrátim sa naspäť do Kristových podobenstiev 5. kapitoly.
For those who disagree with me,
a tí, čo so mnou nesúhlasia,
as my apology and defense,
to je moje ospravedlnenie a obrana.
so, let me summarize.
Takže to zhrniem.
I've been asking about what these words mean, radical feminism, for a
Pýtal
long
som sa,
time.
už dlhšiu dobu, čo znamenajú tieto pojmy. Radikálny feminizmus.
Around April, May time, I began to discuss it publicly, how I viewed it.
Niekedy v apríli, máji som o tom hovoril verejne, že ako som to ja videl. Alebo vidím.
People have disagreed with my perspective.
Ľudia s tou mojou perspektívou nesúhlasili.
And all of that was done before I came across the Christ object lesson passage.
A toto všetko sa udialo predtým, ako som narazil na tú pasáž z Kristových podobenstiev.
Which is why I want to discuss that chapter.
A preto by som chcel o tejto kapitole hovoriť.
Does anybody have any questions of where we're going?
Má niekto nejaké otázky z toho, že kam teraz smerujeme?
So nobody responded for those online.
Nikto neodpovedal pre tých, čo sú online.
What I have done in previous presentations
To, čo som spravil v tých predchádzajúcich prezentáciách,
is to take these two words, radical feminist,
je, že som zobral tieto dve slova, radikálny feminizmus,
and split the term.
a rozdelil som ten pojem.
I've asked what does the word radical mean and what does the word feminist mean.
Pýtal som sa, čo znamená slovo radikálny a čo znamená slovo feminista.
And the reason why people have disagreed with me, at least one of the reasons,
Jeden z dôvodov, prečo ľudia so mnou nesúhlasili,
is because they say that I'm using these terms in a slightly different way than people in the world use those terms.
bol ten, že povedali, že používam tieto pojmy trošku inak, ako sú používané vo svete.
My understanding is different to other experts on this subject, if I can put it that way.
To moje porozumenie je iné oproti tým ďalším expertom na túto tému.
Okay, what does the word radical mean?
Čo znamená slovo radikálny?
Alyssa? Getting to the roots.
Dostať sa na koreň.
Let me know your name, sorry. Sarah. Extreme.
Extrémny.
So the way it's used in modern language
Spôsob, akým sa to používa v tom modernom jazyku,
is to give this connotation of being extreme or being on the fringe.
je, že aby to dalo určitú konotáciu extrému, toho, že sme niekde na okraji.
Fringe, on the edge of society.
Sme proste na nejakej hrane spoločnosti.
And so that's what Sarah said.
To povedala Sara.
Alyssa said root.
A Elisa povedala koreň.
So does anybody else have any thoughts?
Je tu niekto, kto má nejaké ďalšie myšlienky?
We'll just go to Sarah for the moment.
Pôjdeme najprv k Sáre.
So Sarah's added to her view, her explanation.
Sara pridala vlastne svoje vysvetlenie,
Someone who comments,
že je to niekto, kto komentuje,
someone who gives a commentation on society, did you say?
spoločnosť.
On social reforms. So someone who speaks about social reform.
Je to niekto, kto hovorí o sociálnych reformách.
Eva?
Eva?
Okay, so I'll put rebel.
Dám sem rebel.
So all of those explanations are correct.
Všetky tieto vysvetlenia sú správne.
What I would like someone to do,
To, čo by som chcel, aby niekto urobil,
if we take 1, 2, 3, 4,
keď vezmeme 1, 2, 3, 4,
I'm going to say that 1, 2, and 4 are the same.
poviem, že 1, 2 a 4 sú rovnaké.
They give the same idea or concept.
Dávajú tú istú myšlienku alebo koncept.
So I'd like someone to explain them in reference to number 3.
Chcel by som, aby ich niekto vysvetlil v referencii na číslo 3.
So the definition of the word is number 3.
Takže definícia toho slova je číslo 3.
It's not 1, 2, or 4.
Nie je to 1, 2 alebo 4.
But that's how the word is either understood or used very often today.
To je to, ako to slovo dnes je často používané alebo chápané.
So I'd like someone to connect those ideas. How do we get from root to an extreme rebel who wants social reforms?
Chcem, aby niekto prepojil tieto myšlienky. Ako sa dostaneme od koreňu k tomu, že je to extrém alebo sociálne reformy?
Who wants to have a go?
Kto chce skúsiť?
I have an idea.
One moment. Who was that? Manuel?
Yes. It's like, I'm going to give you an example. In construction, we have to destroy first, and then we're going to build.
So Manuel has said he's going to give an example.
Emanuel povedal, že dá príklad.
In order to build, you have to destroy first.
Na to, aby sme budovali, musíme najprv niečo zničiť.
That's it?
Yes, in order for us to have a social reform on the issue of feminism, for example, we need to attack the root, which is patriarchy.
Okay, so Manuel has said if we want to have some kind of change, we have to attack the root, which is patriarchy.
Emanuel hovorí, že ak chceme mať nejakú zmenu, musíme napadnúť ten koreň a to je patriarchát.
I can see your hand. I can see your hand. That is correct.
To je správne,
But I want us to be careful
ale chcem, aby sme boli opatrní,
to handle the rules carefully.
aby sme opatrne zaobchádzali s tými pravidlami.
Because when we speak about roots,
Lebo keď hovoríme o tom koreni,
in this context,
v tomto kontexte,
it's not so much about uprooting patriarchy.
to nie je o tom, že vykoreníme patriarchát.
So I want us to come to a more principled explanation of how we connect these concepts together, how they merge.
Takže chcem, aby sme prišli trošku tak hlbšie v tom princípe k tomu, že ako sa tieto veci spájajú, ako sa
So when you
zlievajú.
give your answer,
Takže keď dávaš tú odpoveď,
I need an explanation how you get from root to extreme.
toto vysvetlenie, že ako sa dostaneš z koreňa na extrém,
How you get from the word root to rebellious.
ako ideš od koreňa k rebelii,
Are you going to do that for us, Kathy?
urobíš to, Katy?
I see it as the root is the plant. And that what we see, the fruit of that particular plant is rebellion, extremism, social reform.
So Kathy has said
Katy povedala,
that the root can be symbolized as a plant
že koreň vlastne môže symbolizovať rastlinu.
and the extremism or rebellion or social reform is the fruit of the plant.
A tá rebelia, sociálna reforma je ovocie tej rastliny alebo
Francisca?
úroda. Francisco?
I'm not going to translate this bit. I think that's what the person meant, yes. Okay, so this will be the last question, then I'll give my thoughts.
Takže ešte posledná otázka a potom dám moje myšlienky.
Christine?
So is it not working because the root, which is patriarchy, is not the same as the people that are being extreme and rebels because they're the ones against patriarchy?
So Christine has said that the root is patriarchy.
Kristín hovorí, že
And-
ten koreň je patriarchát
and the rebels are the ones that are fighting against it.
a rebeli sú tí, ktorí proti ním bojujú.
So they're in conflict.
Sú v konflikte.
So the way I understand these terms,
To, ako ja rozumiem týmto pojmom,
it says, it doesn't actually say it literally, but a radical feminist.
tam sa píše radikálny feminista. To sa nepíše doslovne.
So the radical is, we'll just say it's the woman.
Povedzme, že je to žena, tá radikálna.
She is radical.
Ona je radikálna.
We agree with that?
Súhlasíme?
That's how, when we say, are we radical feminists, we're talking about ourselves. So the woman has become radical.
Takže žena sa stala radikálnou. To vlastne hovoríme o sebe, keď povieme, že sme sa stali radikálni feministi.
So is she positive or
Je
negative?
pozitívna alebo negatívna? Keď je žena radikálna.
So she's
Je
positive.
pozitívna.
So if you just wind back your thoughts, we have to be careful about making root into something negative when it's actually something that's positive or someone that is positive.
A musíme byť opatrní, keď pozeráme na to slovo koreň, aby sme neurobili negatívne z niečoho, čo vlastne je pozitívne.
Victoria? Okay. So this person, we'll say it's a woman, has become radicalized.
Takže tento človek, povedzme, že žena, sa radikalizoval.
And the problem with the word radical
Problém s tým slovom radikálny
is that it's been hijacked,
je ten, že bol unesený.
like that other word that's been hijacked,
Ako aj to druhé slovo, ktoré bolo unesené.
which is what?
A to je ktoré?
Do we guess? Woke.
Woke.
The term woke has been hijacked.
Tento pojem, teraz neviem, čo znamená woke,
I won't go into
bol
the explanation
unesený.
of that.
A
If you're not familiar with it, ask somebody who is.
Ak to nepoznáte to slovo, spýtajte sa niekoho, kto to pozná. Nejdem to teraz rozoberať.
This positive person who has now become radical,
Takže tento pozitívny človek, ktorý sa stal radikálnym,
what have they done?
čo urobili?
What are they doing?
Čo robia?
Radical means root.
Radikál znamená vlastne
So your name?
koreň.
Your name? Lily. So this person
Takže tento človek
is going to see that there is a problem.
uvidí, že je tu problém.
And they're going to try to understand what the problem is.
A budú sa snažiť porozumieť tomu, že aký je ten problém.
And in order for them to do that successfully,
Na to, aby sme boli v tomto úspešní,
what did Lily say they have to do?
čo povedala Lily, že čo musia spraviť?
Eva? Oh, sorry, Victoria? They have to go to the root of the problem.
Musia ísť na koreň toho problému.
So the root is something that's positive.
Takže koreň to je niečo, čo je pozitívne.
It's dealing with something that is negative, of course.
Vysporiadáva sa to s niečím, čo je negatívne, samozrejme.
So when they begin to look at the root of the problem,
Takže keď sa začnú pozerať na koreň problému,
then what happens?
potom čo?
Alyssa says that they're attacked.
Elisa hovorí, že sú napadnutí.
So they're attacked because of the way they view what's happening around them.
Sú napadnutí kvôli tomu, čo sa deje okolo nich, spôsob, ako na to pozerajú.
They stop following the norms of society or the normal view of seeing things.
Nenasledujú normy spoločnosti.
And because they want some kind of change,
A pretože chcú nejakú zmenu,
and what kind of change do they want?
akú zmenu
What kind of
chcú?
change does this woman want?
Akú zmenu chce táto žena?
Someone? Who's speaking? Christine?
Rights for everybody.
Christine said this person wants rights for everybody.
Tento človek chce práva pre všetkých.
So what they want is a fundamental change.
To, čo chcú, je základná zmena.
They don't want some adjustment.
Nechcú nejaké...
They don't want, if we know the word tweak, they don't want some minor change.
Nechcú nejaké úpravy, nejaké malé zmeny. Oni chcú zmenu od základu.
They want the whole system thought through again from the beginning.
Chcú, aby celý systém sa prebudoval od začiatku na novo.
And in order to do that, it demands some significant changes.
Na to, aby to urobili, vyžaduje to významné zmeny.
Do men want that change?
Chcú muži túto zmenu?
Most don't.
Väčšina z nich nie.
Do women want that change?
Chcú ženy túto zmenu?
Same answer.
Rovnaká odpoveď.
Some do, but most don't.
Niektorí chcú, ale väčšina nie.
And so the people who hold these views that there needs to be, that society needs to be reordered,
Ľudia, ktorí sa držia týchto pohľadov, že hovoria, že spoločnosť sa musí celá prebudovať, prerobiť,
they're considered to be extremists.
sú považovaní za extrémistov.
Because they don't fit within the norms of society.
Pretože nezapadajú do tých spoločenských noriem.
So hopefully we've explained how we get from the word root to the word extreme.
Dúfam, že sme vysvetlili to, ako sme sa dostali od slova koreň ku slovu extrém.
And number 2, social reform is just an example of this. It's not a definition.
Sociálna reforma to je príklad tohoto, to nie je definícia.
So that's the word radical.
Takže to je to slovo radikálny.
And what does feminism mean?
A čo znamená slovo feminizmus?
If you're a feminist.
Ak ste feminista.
Jim, could you repeat that? So a feminist is someone who believes that a woman should have the same rights as men.
Takže feminista je niekto, kto verí tomu, že žena by mala mať rovnaké práva ako muž.
Do we all agree with that?
Súhlasíme s tým?
So if we agree with that,
Ak s tým súhlasíme,
Victor, why do we use the word feminine, which means woman?
Vita, prečo používame slovo feminný alebo
If
femín,
it's
to
about
je žena,
equality.
keď je to o rovnosti?
If you don't understand the question, I can repeat it.
Ak nerozumieš otázke, môžem ju zopakovať?
You're not sure?
Či nie si istá?
Gloria? Great.
Are you just asking me? I didn't have my hands.
I know you didn't. My question is,
Moja otázka je,
Jim said feminist or feminism means
Jim povedal, že feminizmus znamená,
women are equal to men or have the same rights. Women have the
že
same rights as
ženy
men.
majú rovnaké práva ako muži.
So why did they use the word, why is that term a gendered term? Why not say radical equalitist or radical equalist?
Prečo je ten pojem vlastne genderový? Prečo to není, že radikálni rovnostkári napríklad?
Go ahead.
In a society where women are undervalued, they don't have the same rights or are not viewed with the same rights.
So Gloria said the term is used because women in the society in which we live
Gloria hovorí, že tento pojem sa používa, pretože ženy v spoločnosti, v ktorej žijeme,
don't have the same rights as men.
nemajú tie isté práva ako muži.
Sarah? She said a movement to empower women.
Ona hovorí, že je to hnutie, ktoré posilňuje ženy.
Anybody else?
Ešte niekto?
Okay, so we all know what this means.
Všetci vieme, čo znamená toto.
I think
Myslím si,
BLM.
BLM.
So what does BLM mean?
Čo znamená BLM?
So several people have said Black Lives Matter.
Niektorí ľudia povedali, na čiernych životoch záleží.
But it actually means
Ale v podstate to znamená,
Black Lives Matter as well
že na čiernych životoch záleží tiež.
as white lives.
Rovnako ako na bielých.
That's what it means, isn't it?
Znamená to toto, nie?
That's what you're going to say, Christy? So we all here agree that that's what BLM means.
Takže my tu všetci súhlasíme s tým, že to je to, čo znamená BLM.
And the problem is in the title.
A problém je v tom názve.
Because what is it? What's the key word that's used there?
Aké je to kľúčové slovo, ktoré sa tu používa?
Black,
Čierny.
which is not an inclusive term.
To nie je taký
It
zahrňujúci
doesn't say
pojem.
all lives matter.
Tam sa nehovorí, že na všetkých životoch záleží.
Human lives matter.
Na ľudských životoch záleží.
It says black lives matter.
Ale sa píše, že na čiernych životoch záleží. Alebo hovorí.
And that's the same reason why this word that we have here, feminist, is a gendered term.
A to je ten istý dôvod, prečo tu máme toto slovo feminizmus a je to genderový pojem.
Because it's a statement
Lebo je to výrok,
not just that women are undervalued,
nielen toho, že ženy sú podcenené, podhodnotené,
that women inherently have the same rights that are afforded to men.
ale že ženy od prírody majú rovnaké práva, aké sú dané mužom.
And just like in the second statement about Black Lives Matter,
A tak ako v tom druhom výroku o na čiernych životoch záleží,
what's that statement making when it comes to Black lives?
čo ten výrok vlastne robí?
Sorry? Chrissy said that they're not treated equally.
Kristi hovorí, že nie je s nimi rovnako zaobchádzané.
Sarah? Black? So we're on Black Lives Matter. So you're saying Black Lives... I'm on Black Lives Matter. You don't know now? This Black Lives Matter concept,
Tento koncept Black Lives Matter,
why is it framed in this way?
prečo je to takto rámcované?
Because it's making a statement.
Robí sa tu výrok.
I'll reframe my question.
Prerámcujem tu moju otázku.
If we were to divide the world into two,
Keby sme mali rozdeliť svet na dve,
half the world have been cancelled, haven't they, in that statement?
časť toho sveta už by bola zrušená v tomto výroku.
Who's been cancelled
Kto
out
bol,
of that? Who's been cancelled out of
kto bol
that
ako keby
statement?
vyčerknutý z tohto výroku?
Eva? All the white people, everyone that's not black.
Všetci bieli, všetci, kto nie sú čierni, boli
They're
vyškrtnutí.
just not part of that statement.
Proste nie sú časťou toho výroku.
The question is why?
A otázka je prečo.
Why have they been excluded?
Prečo boli vylúčení?
Christine? I asked the same question a couple of ways because sometimes people don't get it the first time. So you go to whichever one version of question you like, but they're the same question.
Spýtal som sa tú istú otázku viacerými spôsobmi.
Okay? Oh, no.
But my answer is like, why is
Go ahead now. Sorry.
it framed as Black Lives Matter? And it's because not only are they not treated equally, they're treated worse because like they're always being arrested and
I'm going to stop you. Your answer was because they're not treated fairly.
Čiže ty hovoríš, že je to preto, lebo s nimi sa nezaobchádzalo férovo.
My understanding is
Takže moje porozumenie je,
that either everybody knows
že buď všetci to vedia,
or there's an unwritten code
alebo je taký nepísaný zákon,
that the life of a white person matters.
že závisí na živote bieleho človeka.
Period.
Bodka.
Whether white people are willing to admit that or not is irrelevant.
Či si to bieli ľudia priznajú alebo nie, to je už nepodstatné.
To the framers of this title. They
Pre
say
tých,
it's
ktorí...
a fact that the life of a white person matters.
Oni to hovoria ako fakt, že vlastne život toho bieleho človeka na ňom záleží pre tých, ktorí písali tento názov.
Because their lives already matter,
pretože na ich životoch už záleží,
everything in society is framed around their needs.
Všetko v spoločnosti je rámcované okolo ich potrieb.
It would become redundant,
a už by to bolo také nadbytočné.
Bordering on a tautology.
A bolo by to vlastne takmer tautológia.
To say that everybody's lives matter.
povedať, že na životoch všetkých záleží.
Because everybody would mean white people or include white people.
Lebo tam by sme zahrnuli do všetkých aj bielých ľudí.
And their lives already matter anyway, so there's no point in saying it.
A na ich životoch už záleží, takže nie je žiaden... nie je v tom pointa to vôbec povedať.
So if we take that concept of feminism,
takže keď vezmeme tento koncept do feminizmu,
or the word feminine,
alebo k slovu ženský,
it uses a gender term
používa sa tam genderový pojem.
Because everybody knows
lebo všetci vedia,
that men's lives already matter.
Že na mužských životoch už záleží.
It's not that they matter more and women's lives matter less.
Nie, že by na ich životoch záležalo viac a na ženských menej.
It's a statement to say we already know their lives matter.
My už vieme, že na ich životoch záleží.
And this statement or this ideology says that women's lives matter.
A táto ideológia hovorí, že na ženských životoch záleží.
So, if we're in agreement with what the term radical feminist is,
takže ak sme v súhlase s tým, že čo je tento pojem radikálny feminizmus,
we can see that both men and women can be feminists.
Vidíme, že aj muži a ženy môžu byť feministi.
Because everybody can stand up and say Black Lives Matter.
Lebo každý môže povstať a povedať, na čiernych životoch záleží.
You don't have to be black to make that statement.
Nemusíme byť čierni na to, aby sme toto povedali.
So, if we understand what a feminist is,
keď rozumieme tomu, čo je to feminista,
we all understand that you get different types of feminists.
A vieme, že máme rôzne typy feministov.
And this movement has gravitated to this type of feminist that is called radical, that goes to the roots.
A toto hnutie, ktoré vlastne tak lne k tomu radikálnemu feminizmu, znamená to, že to ide k tomu koreňu. Radikálny to je vlastne koreň.
Does anybody want to make a comment or have a question?
Chce niekto k tomuto niečo okomentovať alebo sa opýtať?
Gloria.
Gloria?
Example that you gave in your past presentation of comparing liberal and radical feminists in April about the lion and the rabbit.
So, Gloria's asked me to go back to a previous presentation.
Takže Gloria ma požiadala, aby som šiel na tú predchádzajúcu prezentáciu.
To compare two types of feminists.
Aby som porovnal dva typy
which I think is important to do.
Čo si myslím, že je dôležité spraviť.
I can't remember the example that you're referring to.
Nepamätám si na ten príklad, o ktorom si hovorila.
Okay, I think I understand briefly. Manuel.
Manuel?
Tautology, then when we say gender equality, we are, that has a parallel to all lives matter, right? Because we are including.
I need to translate or repeat what you've said.
Oh.
What's your thought you're saying?
When we say gender equality,
Musím zopakovať, čo si povedal. Skús mi to ešte raz povedať.
is that a tautology?
So the question is the term gender equality a tautology?
Takže otázka je, že či genderová rovnosť je tautológiou.
Sam, are you saying no? Or no, your brother? I don't know your name, sorry. Zach. I think Zach said, you said no? Or were you just shaking your head? Okay, so I don't think it's all tautology, no.
Nie, nemyslím si, že je to tautológia.
Nope, I don't think it is. So, Ellen?
Suelen?
Something when you were talking about, what was said about comparing feminism with radical feminism with Black Lives Matter, and I was thinking that people aren't just black or white; they're on a continuum.
So Ellen has said, when we talk about Black Lives Matters compared to feminism,
Keď hovoríme o Black Lives Matter, keď to porovnáme s feminizmom,
everybody's on a spectrum.
tak všetci sú na nejakom spektre.
And if we take that concept to feminism, we can also see that we have learned that gender is also on a spectrum.
And so we know that gender is also on a spectrum.
A pohlavie tiež je na spektre.
And what point would you like to make about that? Or is that the point?
I guess the point is that gender equality includes, LGBTQ
So
well as feminine.
she's making the point that it's not just about women, it includes people who are LGBTQ.
Ona hovorí, že to nie je len o ženách, ale zahrňa to vlastne aj LGBTQ.
I think we'd all
Rodová
agree with
rovnosť.
that.
S tým myslím, budeme všetci súhlasiť.
So we've spoken about radical
Takže hovorili sme o tom, čo je radikálne.
and we just want to have a quick look at liberal.
A pozrieme sa na
So what's a liberal
pozrieme
feminist?
sa rýchlo na pojem liberálny. Takže čo je to liberálny feminista?
I've spoken about it before. Some people here have mentioned it.
Hovoril som o tom predtým.
What does a radical feminist want?
Čo chce radikálny feminista?
We already answered it. Anyone?
Well, I think, radical feminist wants to go to the roots and actually
Let's just try to use the phrases that we have here.
be,
Skúsme používať tieto pojmy, čo máme tu.
deconstruct the patriarchy, destroy.
Okay. So, Sarah? Fundamental change? Coming at the back. I'm going to say radical feminists want number 2.
Takže ja poviem, že radikálny feminista,
In a,
číslo
simplistically, they
2,
want social reform.
oni, či chcú, číslo 2, chcú sociálnu reformu?
I'm not discussing the degree or the mechanism for that reform.
Nehovorím o tom stupni reformy alebo o tom mechanizme reformy. Chcú, číslo 2, chcú sociálnu reformu?
Was that liberal feminism, they want to work within the system as it is now.
So I'm not going to translate that because I just want to get there in a second because I want to ask one question first.
Toto nepreložím, lebo k tomu prídeme. Chcem sa ešte spýtať jednu otázku.
I'm going to put number 2,
Dám sem číslo 2,
which is social reform.
sociálna reforma.
That's what the radicals want.
To chcú radikáli.
Does anybody disagree with that? We shouldn't do. I think
Je
we're on
niekto,
the
kto
same
s tým
page.
nesúhlasí?
We haven't defined what liberal is,
Nedefinovali sme, čo je to liberálny,
but tell me what you think liberal feminists want.
ale povedzte mi, čo si myslíte, že liberálne feministky chcú. Alebo feministi.
Isabel?
What they don't want to disrupt, they want to use this infrastructure.
What do they want?
Čo chcú?
Work with the system. That's it.
So you said that they want to work with the system.
Takže oni chcú pracovať so systémom.
I don't think they want to work with the system.
Nemyslím si, že chcú pracovať so systémom.
They may do that,
Môžu to robiť,
but what is it they actually want?
ale čo oni v skutočnosti chcú?
Alyssa,
Same thing,
Elisa?
equality.
they want exactly the same thing.
Oni chcú presne tú istú vec.
Number 2, which is social reform.
Číslo 2 je sociálna reforma.
So my understanding is both types of feminists want exactly the same thing.
Moje porozumenie je to, že obidva typy feministov chcú presne to isté.
So I think liberal wants to like modify social structure, but radical wants to like replace it.
So I'm going to repeat what Sarah said in a moment.
Zopakujem to, čo povedala Sára.
Just want to make sure that we all are okay with those definitions or the goals.
Aby sme sa uistili, že všetci sme v poriadku s tými
So if we agree
definíciami
with
a s
that,
cieľmi. Ak s tým súhlasíme,
then we would want to ask a couple of questions.
tak by sme sa chceli spýtať niekoľko otázok.
How
Ako?
and the degree.
A ten stupeň.
Would we ask why?
Spýtali by sme sa
So tell
prečo.
me, there's 3 questions I've put here
Sú 3 otázky, ktoré som sem dal.
that we should ask ourselves, or perhaps ask ourselves.
Mali by sme sa to asi samých seba spýtať.
What we're doing now is comparing and contrasting these 2 views.
To, čo robíme, je, že porovnávame a dávame do protikladu tieto
how a legitimate question?
dva pohľady.
Put your hands up. Put your hands up if it's not. Okay, we agreed that it's a good question.
Takže
The degree of
Ako?
social reform.
to je dobrá otázka.
Good question.
Stupeň tej sociálnej reformy.
Third one, why?
To je tiež dobrá. A tretia, prečo?
Good question. Okay. Only 1 or 2 people said yes, and the answer is no.
Len pár ľudí povedalo, že áno. Čiže
Why no,
odpoveď
Gloria?
nie. Prečo nie, Gloria?
Because what we're doing is
To, čo robíme, je,
comparing the 2.
že porovnávame tie dve.
And if they both want the same thing,
A ak obe chcú tú istú vec,
why won't do anything for us?
to, že prečo nám nič nepomôže.
Were you going to say anything different, Victoria, or pretty much that? Good. So Victoria was going to say the same.
Viktória chcela povedať to isté.
I want us to be clear why this is a bad road to go down, the why.
Chcem, aby nám bolo jasné, že prečo toto by bola zlá cesta, pýtať sa, že prečo.
Because it won't yield any fruit if we go down that path.
Neprinesie nám to žiadne ovocie, ak pôjdeme touto cestou.
So we'll go to the 2 questions, how and the degree.
Takže pôjdeme s 2 otázkami, ako a ten stupeň.
And Sarah has said
A Sara povedala,
that when you look at the liberals,
že keď sa pozrieme na liberálov,
tell me if this is okay, work within the system.
liberáli pracujú v systéme.
Is that what you said?
Modify the system.
We're not asking what they want.
Nepýtame sa, čo chcú.
You said that this should be modify the system. That was what you've just said.
Ty si povedala, že je to na to,
But I thought
aby mohli
the
upraviť
word
ten systém.
reform means modify.
Ale ja som videl, že to slovo reforma znamená upraviť.
Reform.
Reformovať.
Change the form. And
Zmeniť
the
formu.
prefix re means to modify the form.
To
So that's not the
slovo
how.
re znamená preformovať.
That's actually
Pre-
what they
upraviť.
want or what they're going to do.
To je vlastne to, čo chcú urobiť. To nie je
So
ako,
how
ale
do they
čo chcú.
modify society is the question.
Takže ako upravia spoločnosť? To je tá otázka.
And I thought you had said that the way they do it is that they work within the system.
A ty hovoríš, že spôsob, ako to robia, je, že pracujú v rámci systému.
But I had misunderstood.
Asi som to
Victoria.
porozumel zle.
I still want to make sure that we all understand what liberals want and how they go about doing it.
Stále si chcem byť istý, že rozumieme tomu, čo liberálci chcú a ako to budú robiť.
Are we okay with that reasonable definition? I think it's reasonable. They work within the system.
Sme v poriadku s touto definíciou? Pracujú v rámci systému.
Which means their goal is not to destroy or break the system.
To znamená, že ich zámer nie je zničiť alebo rozbiť systém.
They may say, I would use the word pretend, that their end goal is to break the system.
Môžu povedať, že ten ich záverečný cieľ je rozbiť ten systém, alebo
Whereas
tváriť sa
John
tak.
Bunyan said it's like a fading mirage.
Ale ako hovorí John Bunyan, je to
Fading
ako...
It doesn't matter. It doesn't translate
No.
well. It's okay.
To sa nedá preložiť dobre.
Okay. The degree.
Ten stupeň.
How much change, how much social reform is there going to be?
Koľko bude zmeny, koľko bude sociálnej reformy?
You're liberal. We'll go to manual.
Partial.
Partial? Victoria? Not much?
Čiastočné? Nie veľa?
Francisco?
Subject to compromise, the word compromise.
So there's going to be a compromise.
Takže bude kompromis.
Anything else? Good. Okay, so I'm going to use the word limited. Hopefully that encompasses all your thoughts.
Použijem slovo limitovaný. Dúfam, že tam budú všetky vaše myšlienky.
And I'm going to add the word incremental.
Alebo že to bude zahrňať tie vaše myšlienky. A chcem tam pridať slovo incremental. To neviem, čo musím pozrieť.
Stepwise change.
To je postupná zmena.
Okay, so if that's what liberals do and how they operate,
Ak toto robia liberáli a takto fungujú,
go Victoria. So Victoria says the radicals work against the system.
Viktória hovorí, že radikáli pracujú proti systému.
Anybody else?
Ešte niekto?
Lily? Okay, so we're brainstorming here. So someone said
My
against,
tu máme taký brainstorming. Niekto povedal, že proti
and someone said outside.
a niekto povedal, že mimo.
That was Victoria and Lily.
Viktória a Lily.
Sarah? No? You were going to say the same? Which one were you going to say? Outside. Zach? I don't hear that very well. Underneath. Undermine.
Takže popod. Pomimo.
I'm going to say undermine means, I'll put it down, undermine means against, I think. Anyone else?
Alebo proti. Ešte niekto?
Okay, so we've got this, all of these are synonyms.
Toto všetko sú synonymá.
I want us to give, not synonym, something, a different concept if you've got a different thought or idea. But synonyms are all going to be saying the same.
Chcem, aby ste dali nie synonymum, ale nejaký iný koncept, nejakú inú myšlienku.
Sorry?
Like, are we on how? Yeah, on how. The question about how.
Yes, this is how. How they go about social reform. So we've got, they fight against the system, undermine the system, destroy the system, or they work outside of the system.
Takže ako budú robiť tú sociálnu reformu? Budú pracovať v systéme, mimo systému, proti systému?
Sorry, we'll go to Sam, then David.
Sam a David?
So they want a new system,
Takže oni chcú ten nový systém,
but we're back here to the reform.
ale to sme naspäť tu s tou reformou.
So we know they want to reform the system or have a new one.
Vieme, že chcú reformovať systém alebo mať nový.
The question we're asking is how they go about doing that.
Otázka, ktorú sa pýtame, je, že ako to budú robiť.
And people have basically said they destroy it or they work outside it.
A ľudia v podstate hovoria, zničia to alebo pracujú mimo neho.
David. So David said they're going to create a new one.
David hovorí, že utvoria nový,
which is almost the same as destroy the old one.
čo je takmer to isté, ako zničiť ten starý.
Suellen?
Suellen?
I was gonna say replace, but that sounds a little bit like recreate.
Yes. So replace would just end up being a synonym.
To je vlastne synonymum, keby sme to tam dali.
Chrissy?
Is your question based on what they have been doing or what they want to do sometime in the future?
So Chrissy's question was, am I talking about what they've done in the past up to this point or what they want to do in the future?
Čiže pýtam sa na to, že čo spravili v minulosti alebo čo chcú robiť v budúcnosti.
So I thought you were a radical feminist.
Ja som si myslel, že ty si radikálna feministka.
So when you say them, you mean you?
Keď povieš oni, myslíš tým seba?
There are famous people all across the world.
Na celom svete sú známi ľudia,
but most people are nobodies.
ale väčšina ľudí v podstate sú nikým.
But if they claim the title, they should all be doing the same thing.
Ale keď tvrdia, že teda patria medzi nich, alebo sa
Within
k
a sphere of
tomu
influence.
hlásia, tak mali by vo svojej sfére vplyvu robiť všetci to
So
isté.
we could still answer the question how they would go about doing this.
Stále môžeme odpovedať na otázku, že ako by to urobili.
Go ahead, Chrissy.
Of us, we're just trying to change the mindsets of the people around us.
So Christine says we're going to change the mindset.
Kristín hovorí, že zmeníme tú myseľ, to nastavenie mysle.
Eva? So asking for human rights
Keď sa pýtame na ľudské práva,
is social reform.
alebo žiadať si ľudské práva, to je sociálna reforma?
That's what you want.
Keď to je to, čo chceš?
So you said, but if I said how,
Keby som povedal, že ako,
you said ask for it.
tak ty by si povedal, požiadaj si o to.
So do you think radical feminists would just ask for something?
Myslíš si, že radikálne feministky si len budú niečo žiadať?
Okay, so I'm running out of time, so I go to Victoria.
Míňa sa nám čas, takže ešte Viktória.
Again, is or outside or,
Start again.
but I'm trying to think about against and outside of how come it's against or outside instead of against and outside. Like what's making the against different from the outside? So
I'm not going to translate what Victoria asked, but these are all the words that I've got here on the board
Nebudem všetko prekladať, čo povedala Viktória.
are all words,
Všetky veci,
are
ktoré
all
mám na
words that people have
tabuli,
given me.
to sú slova, ktoré ste mi dali.
We haven't brought them together to try to get a picture of
Ešte-
what it really, of what the how really is.
Ešte sme ich nejako nezhrnuli, aby sme dostali nejaký obraz toho, že čo to je.
Elaine. Uproot means destroy.
Vykoreniť znamená zničiť.
Sarah.
Sara?
I'd like a general concept that's
Chcel by
different
som
to what
taký
we've got
všeobecný
on the
koncept.
board. Zach,
Tak?
trip the system. I can
Nejak
find
tak
trip somewhere
oklamať ten
here.
systém.
We're all doing synonyms.
Live it in our own life.
Sorry?
Live it in our own life.
Live it in our own lives. So if I change my life,
Ak ja zmením môj život,
that's going to go to the root of what's wrong in society.
to pôjde až do koreňa toho, čo je zlé v spoločnosti.
Do you think?
Myslíš?
So if you change your life, Sue Ellen,
Čiže ak ty zmeníš svoj život
and everyone else is ignoring you,
a každý vás ignoruje,
which they are,
čo je pravda,
how's any change happened?
ako sa potom deje nejaká zmena?
Feeling more in my circle of influence.
You do or you don't. So does that mean when you speak, people change?
Znamená to, že keď hovoríš, tak sa ľudia menia?
Not instantaneously, but
So they're not changing or they are?
they may not change in
Okay.
like spreading the gospel.
So Sue Ellen says it's like spreading the gospel.
Suelen hovorí, že je to ako
If she changes her mindset,
zasievanie
other people will as
evanjelia.
well.
Ona zmení svoju myseľ a to ovplyvní druhých.
So I think she said personal influence.
Čiže ona hovorí, že to je osobný vplyv.
Everybody on that side done? No synonyms anymore.
Takže už prosím žiadne synonymá.
We've got create there already. Oh. Oops. Sorry. Zach, you had something to say? Oh, the reason is because it's frozen. No, I don't know why it's frozen. It's on Zoom, it's not frozen.
Na Zoome to nemáme zamrznuté, neviem, prečo nám to tu
We
zamrzlo.
for the translators, I haven't said anything yet. We've got some technical problems.
Máme tu nejaké
Yeah.
technické
So
problémy,
I'm sorry about
netreba
that. We've got the word
prekladať.
create.
Mhm.
Anyone else before we close?
Ešte niekto niečo
Zach?
chce povedať predtým, jak to uzavrieme? Zach?
Agitate. Educate.
Agitovať.
So you want to educate people.
Takže ty chceš ľudí vzdelávať.
I think that's the same as personal influence.
Myslím, že to je to isté ako osobný vplyv.
Anyone else?
Ešte niekto?
So, on the word how, first you voice your needs or wants or things like that. And if that doesn't, come to pass, then you go with whatever's been done in the past from people that have been marginalized and protest or
So first you ask, and if you don't get what you want,
Takže najprv požiadate a keď nedostanete to, čo chcete,
you protest.
tak protestujete.
Do you agree that protesting is fighting against the system?
Súhlasíš s tým, že protestovanie
what degree,
je bojovanie proti systému?
Sorry?
depends to what degree.
Whatever the degree is, it's going against the system.
Akýkoľvek ten stupeň je to idenie
So we only have
proti
against.
systému.
It ends up, protesting becomes a synonym of against.
Protestovať to je synonymum toho proti.
Okay, so I'm going to stop here
Zastavím tu,
because I think we've pretty much exhausted all the ideas that you could think of.
lebo myslím si, že sme už vyčerpali tie myšlienky, o ktorých ste mohli rozmýšľať.
So I want to summarize some thoughts.
Chcel by som zhrnúť nejaké myšlienky.
And I apologize that it's not scrolling on our TV. We'll have to work that out. So I'm going to summarize. Work outside the system.
Takže zhrniem to. Pracovať mimo systému.
Work against the system.
Pracovať proti systému.
Seek to destroy the system.
A snažiť sa zničiť ten systém.
Maybe use your personal influence to educate people.
Možno
about the
používať
system.
váš osobný vplyv na to, aby ste vzdelávali ľudí o tom systéme.
Which would be the same as changing people's mindsets.
To by malo byť to isté, ako meniť myslenie ľudí.
So if that's a summary of how,
Ak toto je zhrnutie toho, že ako
as we close now,
to teraz
think to
uzavrieme,
yourselves,
porozmýšľajte,
are these the definitions that you would use to define the word radical?
sú toto definície, ktoré by ste používali na to, aby ste definovali slovo radikálny?
Did any of these things get to the root of the problem?
Či toto ide na koreň toho problému?
Okay, let's close with prayer.
Uzavrieme s modlitbou.
For those who are joining online, I'll be presenting again tomorrow at the same time.
Zajtra v rovnakom čase sa stretneme online.
Pray. Holy God, we thank you
Svätý Bože, ďakujeme Ti
for your goodness and your mercy towards us.
za Tvoju dobrotu a milosť k nám.
Each of us individually and collectively
Každý z nás jednotlivo aj spoločne
seek for a clearer understanding
nech hľadajú jasnejšie porozumenie
of what it is you expect of us,
toho, čo Ty od nás očakávaš,
what you're asking us to do,
čo od nás žiadaš,
as we go through this camp meeting,
Ako ideme teraz cez tento camp meeting,
may you continue to reveal your will for us.
nech ty naďalej nám zjavíš tvoju vôľu.
In Jesus' name, amen.
V mene Ježiša. Amen.